So today we're going to have a brief discussion on the MT64 shocks that have been fitted to the cruiser for about 50,000 kilometers now. I did a pretty in-depth look at those shocks when I first got them installed. And they were pretty new to the market. So if you want to, I'm not really going to delve into that aspect or that side of it today. If you want to look at that, you can check out that video. It's pretty in-depth. We've had the Old Man EMU MT64 suspension under the rig for about 50,000 kilometers. So starting up the front, I went with the bull bar springs, which are what ARB does. They initially fitted bull bar winch springs. So she sat pretty high, probably right around 3 inches, and obviously a very harsh ride. So I went back to them and let them know the part numbers are wrong and they were clearly the wrong springs, and they put the right springs in. So since then, the front end has settled a lot and it's rode a lot nicer. And as for the back end, went with 600 kilogram leafs, which have turned out to be pretty perfect, I reckon. You know, the rig's sitting nice and level. And I basically went with them just from prior experience with the couple of Hiluxes I've had and Land Cruiser. And I've ran, on the old Land Cruiser, I always ran an alloy tray. So I pretty much always ran 300 kilo rated springs, which were fine. They were good and they always did the job. I mean, you're looking at an alloy tray, Toyota tray is about 150 kilo versus around 300 for the steel. So you chop that weight right in half going down to the alloy. And that always sat about right for me, 300 kilo springs, 150 kilo tray weight. I always had more than 150 kilos in the tray, but keep in mind, generally speaking, when you go, say, a spring weight of 300 kilo, you can carry more than that. And usually the Old Man EMU ones will say, like, say you go for a 600 like I have, it'll say optimum carrying weight of around 600 kilo, but you can go 2 GVM. So I think 600 is pretty much perfect for me with a 300 kilo tray weight, and then the canopy, tools, fuel, everything I carry, usually sitting around, including the tray, I'd say probably 700 kilo, thereabouts, and it seems to work very well. Obviously the MT64 shocks were selected to match those spring rates. I believe that going with the 600 kilo rear shock, if you go the 300 kilo spec leaf pack, I think they give you the same shock. So, which leads me into talk about how does it ride? How has it been riding over this 50,000 kilometers? Well, it's a very controlled, well-mannered ride. So there's no doubts there, and it handles the big hits and the G-outs well. And it also, the suspension and the shocks have carried the weight well. The only thing I've really noticed about these shocks, probably more than most others, except for some Ironmans I ran, were that they seem to be very firm valved. So probably a little bit too much for my liking. Now, in the marketing, they say that they're tailored towards overlanders doing long, harsh Ks with big weight. So it sounds like they're valved for that. Like I said, they have a very good, compliant ride. The setup that I'm running, it isn't, I wouldn't say it's that plush. I wouldn't say it's downright uncomfortable, but I definitely wouldn't say it's plush. And if, you know, I don't drop air pressures or anything like that, it's just ridiculous. So, but you still have that control there, which is one of the main things at the end of the day when you're, you know, a lot of the driving I do is high speed, dirt roads, corrugations, rough, big G-outs, that sort of stuff. So it's handled that pretty well. Now, the pros, or the things I would say I like most about this system, and these shocks in particular, is just how big and robust and bomb-proof I would say they are. They're a 64 millimeter internal bore, which is huge, you know. They are a big shock. Single body alloy, they dissipate heat well, they're tough, and they've got a very thick, I believe it's a 22 mil shaft. Again, all those specs are in that earlier video I did months ago. So I would say that they're a fairly bomb-proof, tough shock. That's just with my use. So with my experience with the gear. Do I have any cons? Look, like I said, I'd probably move the harsh ride over to the con side, but only just marginally. I don't really know if this is a con, but the rear bushes on the rear shocks are just starting to let go. I think up the top, but I know for sure down the bottom, there's a bit of movement there, and I've had a little bit of a slight knocking noise. So I do have those bushes and I've got to change them out. It's cheap, it's easy. In fact, ARB, I went straight in there and told them what was going on, and they just threw me a set for free. So I haven't changed them yet, and my rig's actually got to go to ARB very soon. So I may just let them do it. I'm not too sure yet. They're not completely flogged. So, I mean, after 50,000 Ks, do I think that that's all right? Look, as most of you know, my car gets flogged. This suspension has absolutely copped it and handled everything well. You know, I'm not really mad about the bushes flogging out. It's 50,000 Ks of harsh terrain. And not only that, we've had lots of rain lately. So there's so much mud and sand and gritty stuff that just gets caked in all amongst there. So they've probably been chewed out. They're you know, natural rubber bushes. So really that's what you want, in my opinion. Now, having ran BP51s, MT64s, and the Old Man Emu Nitro Charger Sports, I've pretty much ran every single shock that ARB or Old Man Emu have to offer. If you were to ask me what I think are the best or what has been my best experience so far, it's honestly pretty hard, because I ran BP51s years ago on an old cruiser, and then I ran them for over 100,000 K on a Hilux, but that was all a few years ago, so I'm it's not fresh in my mind. But the BPs are really good, and they did really well. So I've done well over 100,000 Ks with them, and I think 110,000 on a Hilux, one set. No bearings let go, no oil leaks. The remote reservoirs stayed where they were meant to stay. Everything was reliable for 110,000 kilometers doing this same harsh work. So they rode well, they're adjustable. Can't really say enough about them. The Nitro Sports I ran, they're only a 35 mil bore. They're relatively cheap. I had them on my cruiser. I was actually really shocked by them. They were a lot better than I thought, and they rode a lot better than I thought they would. And they're also very robust. And then you got the MT64s. So if I had to say, you know, which shock would I suggest to most people? Again, it's kind of hard to say, because I've had pretty much a good solid run with everything they have to offer. But the Nitro Charger Sports are on the, you know, on the bottom, and I would run them again in a heartbeat. I really had no dramas with them, and they're just a tough, reliable, robust shock absorber. So I'd have pretty much no dramas recommending any of the shocks they offer, purely just based on my experience. Obviously everyone's going to be different. I'm sure someone's had a set and they've blown out or whatever, but you're going to get that with everything. Now these MT64s, they're kind of the mid-spec. They sit below the BP51s, but above the Nitro Charger Sports. Now they're not a cheap shock. Obviously the Nitro Charger Sports are much cheaper. So, I mean, it really just depends what you're looking to go with. The Nitro Charger Sports are just a bolt-in, set and forget. The MT64s are more or less the same when you're talking about them being fitted to a solid axle like a cruiser. When you go to an IFS rig, the front coilovers are actually adjustable on the MT64s. So a bit like the BP51s, it's the same thing. Obviously you get the compression and rebound adjustability on the BP51s along with the remote res. So, you know, it's all dependent on what your usage is, you know, what your budget is, what you're looking to get out of them at the end of the day. May as well go into the rear springs a bit. Something I really like about them is that they're greasable shackles. So you can keep that grease pumped into them. And obviously, because I'm in the dirt and dust all day, nearly every day, it's just a good thing to be able to grease them up. Also, again, because we've had heaps of rain, you know, water gets in everywhere, and as soon as you've been driving through a bunch of water, it's always smart to grease up the drive line. So while I'm doing that, I grease up the rear shackles, and that keeps everything happy. Now, I know I've heard of some people complaining with the Old Man Emu gear that their bushes squeak a lot, or their leaves squeak a lot. Now, if memory serves me correct, I did have some dramas with that, with the Hilux rear leaves. It wasn't really bad, and I just didn't really care about it. The Land Cruiser, I haven't had that problem at all, so I'm not really sure what that's about. Well, anyway, there we have it, guys. There's just a brief review on the MT64s that are under the Land Cruiser. All in all, I mean, I rate them. Like I said, they're a tough, solid shock. Would I run them again? Look, I probably would. Like I said, I haven't had any dramas, although I do think they ride a bit harsh. And once they've had it and I've had enough of this setup, I will be going to something different, purely just to try something different. Anyway, thanks very much, guys. Take it easy. So I'm just under here getting some like B-roll of the shocks, and this has copped a massive hit. Like, look at the size of that dent, and look at this weeping oil under here. I swear to God, I've had the worst run with these bloody diff locks on full drives, eh? So this doesn't look good. That's weeping oil, so I bet you I'm up for a new diff carrier on this friggin' thing as well. 3 on the Hiluxes and maybe one more to add to the list. Far out. This guard's absolutely flogged. Well, I'll let you know what happens there.